Okay, cool. So what we're going to look at today are these little things, which are RCF Monitor 5S's. They're a 5-inch carbon fibre cone and a little driver. They run at about 175 watts, I think they're rated at. And to be honest, they're really quite good for the price. We tend to use them, or I use them, these are my personal ones, for vocal reinforcement. They're really nice if someone's got an acoustic guitar just singing along. But one of the problems I do have is they're designed really as an installation speaker. I've got them second hand, so we've got a very good deal on them. What I'd like to try and do today is to fit a top hat adapter onto the bottom. So I know that that might pose a couple of problems, so I'm going to talk you through what I'm going to do to solve those problems. We whack the camera back on its stand. Cool, so the bottom of the Monitor 5S's have an M10 Stand Adapter. There's actually one on each end, but we've only ever used the bottom of those. That means you can fit them straight to a microphone stand if you want, but they're still pretty reasonably weighty. So what we've actually ordered are some very, very, very cheap top hat adapters. We got ours from CPC, which is also known as One Call Farnell. These are cheap as you like. They're about £3 or £4, but they come with an M8 thread bolt welded into the bottom, and with the M10 nut positioned on the bottom of the monitor. That's not amazing. I have to say I hadn't fully appreciated that when we ordered them, but our options here are either to drill the bolt out of the top of the stand adapter and then mount an M10 in its place, or to take the cabinet apart and just kind of do up some nuts on the inside of the cab to permanently mount the top hat. Now I've got 4 of these and I definitely want 2 of them to be front of house all the time, so we're going to take it apart and mount our top hat adapter. Okay, ready to go, taking apart the RCF Monitor 5S in order to mount the top hat adapter. So off we go. Now I personally really like keeping outer finishes of stuff in good condition, so I'm going to take extra care not to scratch the grill or to put any grooves in the polycarbonate. These speakers aren't really designed to be taken apart once they've been built, which is a bit of a shame for us, but not to worry. The securing bolts are pretty long and they're pretty tight as well, so if you've got a drill rather than hand screwdriver, it's definitely the way forward. But these boxes are quite well made, and as I say, they sound pretty good, certainly for their price, but also for their size as well. You can get some decent noise out of them. This one's a tiny bit dusty, let's give that a wipe down first. Cool, right. Good. Coming apart nice and easily. Here you can see the inside of it nice and clearly. 175 watt rated unit, so the magnet on the back of the driver, even though it's a tiny driver in 5-inch, is quite a nice magnet assembly. Crossover unit, and obviously the tweeter here. Fiberglass in there. The main reason for that is to try and stop standing waves occurring, to reduce the resonances that are within the cabinet. On the crossover unit, I don't know whether you can see there's a light bulb normally from a car. It's normally from some kind of 12-volt application. That acts as a sacrificial protection device for the main driver, whereby if you're pushing far too much current, or there's a DC situation that's going to cause the voice coil to melt, you'll find that the light bulb will blow rather than destroy the speaker, so that's great. The reason we're inside it today is to have a go at this stand adapter to see if we can change it out. So It's a bad workman that blames his tools. What I would really like would be a set of spanners at this point, but all I've actually got is this pair of mole grips. And this bit may be easier said than done. Almost. Cool, there we go. That's the M10 Stand Adapter and a back nut for it. We'll keep those safe because one day I may want to undo this modification and kind of refit it in. So I'm probably going to reuse I'm not going to. This is a little bit crude, I'm not especially proud of it, but if it works, it works. Also, these speakers are for my own personal use on projects that I get involved with, and they're not for a customer, so I probably wouldn't do this if anyone was actually paying me. That thread is a little bit painted, so I'm just going to try and clean the thread up before we actually put it in, just by running nut over it a couple of times. Again, ideal world we would have nylocks rather than conventional standard nuts, but I haven't got any of those, which is a bit of a shame. Nothing like being prepared. Now, it's not super easy to get inside these, so I'm just going to make sure that they're done up nice and tightly so that we don't need to get back in. Also, we just said we would like to use nylocks, which are nuts which have a nylon ring mounted in them so that they don't rattle free. This is a loudspeaker after all. So I'm going to use a version of thread lock. I wouldn't actually normally advise in any way gluing nuts onto any kind of thread because you always really want the ability to undo it, but I'm only just going to put a tad on, just enough to try and stop it working itself loose as the loudspeaker works. If we ever need to get in there, we can crack that glue off relatively easily. Also, it's not stopping us from getting access to the cabinet at all, so that kind of works. But good, that's all. It's all gone quite nicely, so we'll go back for reassembly. Again, here on the face you can see the carbon fibre driver and the port. Reasonably unusual on tiny speakers like this to have them ported, but as I say, these ones sound pretty good. And just as I put the screws back in, I'm just going to be aware of the order that I tighten them up. Especially with these polycarbonate cabinets, they can flex a little bit as you screw them back together. So what I'm doing is driving all the screws, just putting all the screws roughly in place to begin with. And then what we're actually going to do is tighten them up in not a random order, but generally from each end and then work towards the centre. What that means is if we did it all from one end first, the cab could close up unevenly and then not actually come together properly, and that would be very annoying because you'd have to take it apart again. But by doing the screws up in the opposite corners first, for example, you'll bring the surfaces together nicely and evenly and you'll get a good finish. Less of an issue with wood, it's an issue on stuff like cylinder heads if you work with engines, but on polycarbonate loudspeakers, as I say, they can flex. So just something to work out with. With these little ones, it's not a massive problem, but if you're working on a big, like 12 or 15 inch unit, it can be very annoying to get all the way around and then find that it doesn't go together properly. Cool, these grills can be a real pain, but I just encourage you to take your time because you don't want to scratch them up. You want the speaker to look nice when you're finished. Cool, there we go. One RCF Monitor 5S, now with the top hat. Cool, so 2 finished now, 2 stands mounted, job done.